This is a technology that exceeds human cognition.
You're working with Anthropic, you're working with OpenAI, you're working with Google, you're working with Microsoft. What don't they get about what's going on?
Yeah, I'd say other than Elon, don't think you're going to stop AI by just protesting a data center.
You know, it really does come down at the end of the day to a Donald Trump and a Xi Jinping. Could you call them together?
I say in my memo that all
Van Jones on Substack.
It's a huge honor to be with you. I read the essay. I feel much more encouraged, challenged, but also much more encouraged having read it for you to be coming off the sidelines and pulling people together to fix this important. I want to set this up properly. For you to come in and take this position is so important because you've been a titan on the tech side. You started Microsoft. It's one of the probably most important companies in the history of capitalism. Then you started the Gates Foundation, which is the signature charity probably in the world. So you kind of have a double credential here: powerful on technology, powerful on philanthropy. This essay puts you right there at the crossroads of technology and public purpose. You're calling people together to say, look, we've got to get AI right. Why did you decide to do it now? You got the things you're scared about, the things you're excited about, things you want us to do, but just set me up. What is a concern that has Bill Gates raising his hand today saying, guys, look at this?
Yeah, there's two dramatic things during the last year that compelled me to write a almost shrill essay about, wow, we are not paying enough attention to minimizing the bad or accelerating the good. The first is that the models have gotten way more powerful, even faster than I expected. I was stunned when I first saw Chat a little over 3 years ago. And now, at the end of last year, I saw a lot of the models, but Claude Code first, that was actually writing programs and taking the one thing I'm good at and being almost superhuman at that. And then the power through the agentic approach of designing molecules or finding flaws in software or being so human-like that you almost feel like you have a relationship. So that's the first thing, is that the models, anybody who hasn't used the latest, they are amazing. And I know from talking to the industry that even this year we'll see big improvements. Second is that I was kind of stunned that after many years of saying when we got to a threshold that the models were good, and were a threat for cyber attacks or bioterrorism, that then we'd exercise some discretion, at least against those particular capabilities. And I've been kind of stunned this year that there hasn't been, either within the industry or outside the industry, more of a clarion call that, wait a minute, this is not like any other technology. And in fact, some people saying, well, technology's always been good, don't get upset about this one.
Let's just talk about that before we get into some of the concerns that you're raising. For you to be saying, hey, this disruption is different, you got to take that very seriously, because you were the most disruptive kid on earth when you came on. I mean, you came in and you turned the tables on everything and created, you were one of the big people, the entire internet boom, most of what we associate with the last internet and technology revolution you led. And people were terrified of you and said you were going to disrupt too much. But it all worked out pretty well. What's different? What's different about this AI boom, such that the wonder kid from the last boom is saying, slow down? What's different?
Yeah, so as you say, I've always thought innovation was a net good, even if it had some drawbacks. When I did word processors, people then say, but you could write a nasty note or something. It was overall very empowering for people. What's different here is that this is a technology that exceeds human cognition. Its ability to outthink us and to understand what we want and engage in things that we don't expect. Just the level of power, so the job market will be deeply affected. And somebody who couldn't have designed a cyber attack will be allowed at very low cost to do that. So we've reached this absolute threshold of power that makes this in the history of mankind, a uniquely dangerous and also possibly, positive tool for us to use.
One of the things you said in the essay that got my attention was that all of the good things that could come out of this technology, all the medical breakthroughs, they go right hand in hand at the same time with all the scary stuff. If something is powerful enough to cure disease, it's also powerful enough to create some disease. And that you've got to, therefore, if you want the good, you've got to take the bad seriously. And right now, you're saying we just don't have any construct in the private sector, the public sector, the philanthropic sector to deal with something like this. You said something about children in this essay. I think people should really look at. You said there's a danger these chatbots create what you call a greenhouse bubble in which the children don't actually develop very well. Can you talk to the parents here? We're going to get to all the positive stuff in a second, but let's get the threats right. We'll get the positive stuff. But on the threat side, what is this greenhouse effect you're concerned about for kids?
Well, even before AI is getting so powerful, the idea that kids are a little less mature, a little less going out and engaging with each other. Jonathan Haidt, Scott Galloway, a number of very powerful observers have seen this trend. And so I would say we should be very concerned that unless AI is used tastefully, that it'll take that to a whole new level. I mean, you could literally have a kid who has 4 or 5 friends, all of which are AIs, and they'll never experience, okay, my friend's in a bad mood today, or my friend misunderstood me, or my friend needs help, because it'll be so accommodating that the normal adjustment we go through of, developing socially, that will be completely ignored. And so I even worry about these psychosocial dependency things for adults, but I think the black and white part of this is, what is this going to do to kids, and how do you engage parents? How do you put limits on? And that's one area where China's actually been the strongest at saying, hey, we're just not going to have kids have access to this.
One thing you said in the essay that I thought was touching was that kids getting the skills to adjust is tough. And, as a kid, I wasn't that socially skilled. You said you weren't that socially skilled, but you said your mom actually played a big role in helping you. What did your mom do that helped you? Because you got a bunch of parents listening now. We got their attention. What did your mom do for you that, had you been stuck with a chatbot, would have never happened?
Well, both socializing with people my own age, being willing to take me, invite people over, making it fun for kids to come over. If I did well with the kid, she'd kind of praise that. If I sort of disappeared, she'd, say that's not appropriate. Also with adults, when they'd have parties or any adults coming over, I remember thinking, no, I'm going to have to talk to these adults. And they're going to say, oh, you've grown so much or whatever. But over time, actually, that part of my social skill developed faster than talking with my peers. And it ended up being very helpful to me, where people would choose to mentor me because I could talk to them about the crazy ideas I had. And so, I give my mom immense credit for taking a introverted kid who could have just sat at the computer and giving me enough social skills that when I needed to hire people and promote, Microsoft products, that I had some capability.
My mom was the same with me. I was a shy kid. I wrote a lot of poems and drew a lot of cartoons, and I carry my books to the sports games, and but she worked on me, and I just think it's important. Parenting gets more important in the AI age, not less. But speaking of the AI age and the AI race, Look, you're in such a unique position because, you're actually from the foundation point of view, which is the philanthropic side, you're working with all the hyperscalers. You're working with Anthropic, you're working with OpenAI, you're working with Google, you're working with Microsoft. So here you are on the foundation side trying to make the world better, and you are in direct partnership with the people who are leading this revolution. What don't they get? Talk about your relationship with the existing AI leadership.
Yeah, I'd say other than Elon, I have a great relationship with all the AI leaders. People like Demis or Sundar, who's the CEO, Mustafa at Microsoft, Satya, Sam Altman, really helped me understand their roadmap. Dario Amodei and their team. If you look at the statements they've made, they share a lot of these concerns. Maybe one is a little more black and white than others. But even when OpenAI is creating its product, they had various rules like, well, if we get to certain dangerous thresholds, maybe we'll have to hold back. Unfortunately, because we have many of these people competing with each other, both in the United States and primarily in China, none of them individually can hold back. And so they're all kind of waiting for people outside the industry to come in and say, wait a minute, a model that can make new molecules needs to be monitored to make sure it's not a tool for bioterrorism. And so I think actually, as we make this concrete, I don't think we'll see a lot of resistance. They've said they want to engage government, but here we are. And I'd say it's the sophistication on the other side where I would say the awareness of these downsides is not as great as it needs to be in either political party. I'm not, saying one party's got it wrong. It's both. As you see graduates who use AI, they know how powerful it is, and they're concerned about the disproportionate effect of the job market changes on them. So you have them being upset. You have people attacking data centers, but stopping every data center would not lessen the challenges we face. We need solutions very specific to the job market or bioterrorism that I don't think the industry will resist. If we said stop completely, okay, they would. But I think there's a solution that's far short of that.
What you're suggesting is a level of coordination between the public sector and the private sector, from the grassroots all the way to global, that really hasn't been achieved yet by humanity. One thing you said in the essay, and this is not just like, the nuclear arms race, where you're only regulating one technology in the weapons space. AI is going to hit literally every single part of the economy. And so this is kind of why you're suggesting and really calling for people to come together to get this thing solved. But it does seem to me that there's this sort of trap that the AI companies are in, and that they have to keep racing ahead of each other. America's got to beat China, Anthropic's got to beat OpenAI. And once you're in this kind of competitive race forward dynamic, isn't it very hard to tap the brakes? Is that why you're saying that governments have to come together to get this done?
Yes, expecting an industry to self-regulate, including issues like psychosocial effects that, they're not social scientists, psychologists. We need to bring in all of academia, economists, social scientists to weigh in on these things. And, some of them aren't using the AI. Some of them have heard, they're always going to make lots of mistakes. And so my memo is sort of a shrill call that, hey, anyone who says this is like past technologies, they are wrong. And we will be sorry if we don't bring all these groups in. And of course, in the end, it's the government who's going to set the rules and say, let's minimize cyber attacks with these guardrails. I don't really understand when people say they're going to do voluntary reviews. It means nothing unless you set the criteria of what you're looking for and you say what you would do if those criteria aren't met.
Yeah. one of the things I've been seeing is that when I'm with the AI leaders, they say we need the government to regulate. But I'm with the government leaders, they're like, we don't know how to regulate. This is all new stuff. So,
That's a fair summary of where
yeah.
we are. And if this was some minor thing, we could say, okay, there'll be a few, problems. But this
Yes.
is the most major thing of
Mhm.
technology in human history. And so that
Yeah.
state of affairs has got to change quickly.
I want to get to this because you have a vision here. And I know it's early, and you say in the essay, look, I'm going to come back on this, I'm going to come back on that. So I'm not trying to put you in a box, but I was very inspired by the vision. Your vision is that the governments of the world and leaders from all parts of life are going to have to come together and coordinate in a new way. It almost, in my mind, implied, like after World War II, and we had to put together like the United
Exactly.
Nations, and you had to put. So this is not pass a bill. Bill Gates is not coming and saying pass a bill. He's saying something very different. He's saying that this requires a different level of coordination, and we've got to think about how the grassroots people and the global leaders sit together. Can you just talk about that? Because this is a if people take you seriously, something serious could change, and you've also got the ability with your resources to help make something change. Just daydream with me. What would it look like? I mean, is it Xi Jinping and Trump at a kind of Gorbachev, Reagan summit? Like, talk to me about how this might come to be.
Well, enough of the really cutting edge work has been done in the US and China that I think if the US said, okay, models that make new molecules need to be monitored to make sure that's benign usage, and we're not going to let somebody put out a model that violates that. If the US offered that, I'm 90% sure China would say, yes, we'll do the same thing. And then you bring everybody else together because US and China is such a high percentage of it. And even though the US and China disagree on a lot of things, enabling bioterrorism is not one of those things. And so I think there's a lack of recognition that we are at these dangerous thresholds and we need to make really concrete proposals. And anyone who says, well, the industry won't accept it or that China won't accept it, I say, let's test that proposition because I don't think that's right. I think what's missing are the specifics. And in some areas, I don't know the full solution. In bioterror, I know a lot. In cyber, I know some. The job market stuff really is going to be one of the biggest debates. And then this psychosocial usage, also a gigantic debate about what's appropriate and what's not. I mean, we even have the Pope weighing in, and I thought that was fantastic to say in all of this, we have to remember that humanness is a special thing. It
Yeah.
goes beyond IQ or even, the current capitalistic incentives. And so let's try and preserve that. And that
Hmm.
I thought was very timely.
Look, I thought that was a very important moment. I think it's when we look back at the sort of dawn of this new exponential era. Obviously ChatGPT, is sort of like the big new opening of the chapter, and you have some other things. But I think the Pope statement, winds up being very important. But I think your statement winds up being very important because you're not Sam Altman. You don't have a dog in this race. You're not, Dario. These are great people. They're going to be in history books, but they do have a dog in the race. You're different in that you know them, you work with them, they probably look up to you, but you're taking a different, you're saying, hold on a second. I know disruption when I see it. look at my life. I'm Bill Gates. I'm saying this could be too much disruption. You even said in the essay that if you could slow it down, you would, because you just want some of this society to have a chance to adjust, but you don't believe that it can be slowed down. So we need to coordinate. I think it's a very big deal. And I think because you don't have a dog in the race, I think you might have real convening power here. I just want to stick with this just a little bit longer. If it really does come down at the end of the day to a Donald Trump and a Xi Jinping, neither of whom, like you said, want bioterrorism. They definitely don't want to be usurped by, AI companies. Uh, could you call them together? I mean, if a Bill Gates calls them both, I mean, could it be as simple as invite them over? I mean, talk to me about it. I'm getting hopeful.
Yeah, so I say in my memo that I'll take individual topics and dive into more specifics. And so before the end of the year, I will say on the bioterrorism risk front, particularly what I think the review criteria should be, and the step, which is this required monitoring. And I think there's a chance that that could be put into very concrete form. I don't want to go to the Trump level unless it's very concrete, because you only get so many chances for Trump and Xi to say, okay, is this something that doesn't tilt the playing field in some unfair way? Is this all to the good? And the U.S. has a history since World War II, as you said, of creating, whether it's for currencies or nuclear weapons. This one's new. This one's, I would say, bigger than any of those. But the world, when we come to them in a benign way and involve them in the dialogue, the U.S. should be very proud of that strong role. And so, yes, I do think before the end of the year, a couple things about how we curb bad outcomes from AI could be under discussion for adoption next year.
Well, look, I mean, this is one of the best things I've heard is that you're going to be putting a but. No, I'm serious. Like people, you get freaked out, man. I get scared. I look at all this stuff on my Instagram. Will have you climbing under the bed. So the idea that
no, same here, and that's not good.
Yeah. So you're going to put some real mind share toward developing some solutions and move them over. Let's just talk about a couple of the concepts in the essay. And I really encourage everybody just read the essay, because this is not high science. This is direct, relatable, understandable by anybody, common sense coming from somebody who people have to take seriously. But you put forward an idea that was new to me, which is the idea of the human reserved, that there should be some kinds of work, there should be some things in our society that are labeled human reserved. Even if a robot could do it cheaper, faster, humans should do it. Can you describe this concept and some of the kinds of work that you think are, I mean, it felt like almost sacred for people?
Yeah. So, I think, being a jury, being a judge, certain elements in the world of art, taking care of children, maybe food preparation, certain aspects of education, where you're talking to a kid about their motivation and what they want to do with their life. I see lots of jobs that we should want humans to do. Some areas, like, do you want a human to drive your cab? It looks like people actually in that case prefer not to have a human. And so, I don't think, we'll jam that just for the economic benefit. I think it's mostly about human relations. And you can say, okay, what part of the job market is that? If you could get it up to 40 or 50%, then the idea of, slightly shorter work week or earlier retirement, then you can imagine, okay, the role of jobs that are not just economic, but give you purpose, a way that you connect with other people, that will still be a central piece of how we grow up and how we're forced to mature and have a sense of our contribution. And so this is a new concept. I haven't seen it anywhere.
I haven't either.
Because I see the robots coming or the power of the AIs. I'm able to say we've got to make the decision now.
Right.
And I don't think it'll slow down the AI industry, because it'll still leave a lot of things that they can do fantastic work on.
I like the language and I like the leadership, because it gives people a chance to sort of, people do, from the Pope all the way down, feel like there's something special that's going to get run over by robots and bots, and we're all just going to be sitting around hoping that the robots give us a handout check, which does not seem like a great way to live. Right now, if you want to have a robot do all this type of stuff, you'd have to be a rich person to do it. But you could imagine.
No, good point.
That it flips, where the robots, where talking to humans becomes almost like a luxury. You could imagine a world where there's so many robots doing stuff that, everybody's in a classroom with robots and the only rich kids get the human teachers. So there's a lot to work out here, but I love this idea of the human reserve category. Look, in the time we've got left, And let me just talk about all the stuff in your essay that people might be still worried about. You talk about the need for a better, stronger safety net. But as we've already kind of bumped into, people don't just want a check. They don't just want their robot rebate. People do want something, right, to do and to feel meaningful. And all the work you've done in Africa, you talk a little bit about your understanding about the importance of human agency, the importance of human dignity, that we don't lose that in this process.
I think there's some benefits to the current world where the demand for jobs is high and it creates the incentive for learning and finding the thing that you really like to do. And we actually, kind of tax labor, uh, and treat capital well. But in this new era, that's another thing that we're going to have to go back and look at. In Africa, the lack of doctors and teachers is so extreme that, taking the healthcare workers there are and making them more productive, even raising the quality of what they can do. Say the patient has in their native language a discussion with the AI before they come in, then, that just saves a ton of time. And you can decide, when visits are necessary. So I was in Rwanda uh, a few weeks ago, seeing the early work to both help the patients and those healthcare workers. And so the Gates Foundation, a lot of our focus is on the good stuff, help that farmer, help that student, help that patient, get a level of care that without AI would be decades before they would have the economic development to have what we in relatively well-off countries, okay, with lots of things we need to improve, but they're 20 years away from even where we are today. And as you say, AI market forces will make it available to the rich countries, rich companies, rich people. And the last thing, it could take a long time to get out to other people. So from the beginning, to have a philanthropic lens on this and say, what about the farmer who has the least help today? Because the AI, we can make it so cheap. The idea of letting them talk about their plants and send a photo in of what might be going on, that can literally cost a few cents, but, change that person's life. Their kids are well nourished. And so the good side of this is really amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I love that, and that you're really putting your money where your mouth is, literally, in terms of the Gates Foundation, using AI for good, like you said, helping the farmers, helping everyone. And I think that's another reason why I think you doing this is going to be very important, because I think you've got the ability to bring different kind of people, different perspectives together. One of the things that people that I talk to worry about is things like ownership, control, power. Like, even if everybody gets to sort of be consulted, who should own the data? The people who, created the data, the people who put it into the LAM. They're going to be, I would imagine, a lot as you move forward trying to get this. There are going to be some serious questions around power, ownership, control. Do you think those are valid concerns for people to have at the grassroots level?
Oh, absolutely. I think they've got to make sure that they find the right outlet, though. Just saying don't build a data center, there may be local reasons why that's appropriate, but don't think you're going to stop AI by just protesting a data center. That's like saying, climate change will be stopped if I just protest oil company, annual meetings. We really have to do the hard work to prevent the harms. We could have the wealth in society could be out of balance because of this stuff. And so I say to the industry, the people in it, unless you're participating in the discussions of those solutions, there's a chance that when you get unemployment caused by AI, somebody could just brute force shut this whole thing down, the good with the bad, if we're not smart about it. And I think we see signs of that emerging. So yes, power imbalance here will lead to a sort of a political backlash bigger than we've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm excited about what you're doing. I'm looking forward to the next things that you're writing. And I just want to say before we close, just a couple of words of appreciation. Now, I learned something about you, which is that you're colorblind. Not in the Dr. King sense of the word, you're literally colorblind. So I want to point out that you may not be aware of this. I'm actually Black. I'm African American. And, so, as an African American, I just want to say you have probably saved more Black lives than any living person, at least you and your teams. When you talk about having cut the death rate of Black babies in Africa in half, that itself is such an extraordinary accomplishment. And everybody said it was impossible. And you figured out a way to get it done. And I just want to thank you. I mean, to me, just again, as a father of 4 Black babies, that by itself puts you, on the Mount Rushmores. And they're going to tell you this is impossible, and it's not impossible. I think it can be done. I think you're well on your way. So thank you on behalf of a bunch of worried parents. This AI stuff is scary as heck, but it's a little bit less scary today because of Bill Gates. Thank you, brother. Let's keep talking.
Great to talk to you.
Yes, sir. Be continued.
Van Jones on Substack.